Welcome to CAD Talks, tackling issues in your community.
Well, welcome to CAD Talks. This is our fifth one. We did our special on Friday. Anybody who came to that one, fantastic. Some low numbers today, but 13 is better than 0. So not to worry about that. We'll still be able to have these recorded and put across onto the YouTube and everything else, so people will still be able to view these and at least get the information that we put across. It is December, so we kind of expect this type of thing. So today's topic is we're going to be doing alcohol awareness and recovery. I've got a couple of questions that we're going to go through. Hopefully we'll have a couple of questions in there. Most of you all speakers, so you might have questions for each other. Who knows? So first thing to do is, Jackie's actually already introduced herself, but do you want to introduce yourself again?
Yes.
Now we're on recording. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Jackie Robinson, and I'm here on behalf of Wellbeing Lancashire. What's Wellbeing Lancashire? So it is a group of wellbeing providers, an alliance of people who came together. Emma-Louise Fusari is one of them, and we want to be the bridge between NHS, GPs, everyone coming together. We quite often find people doing things all in different areas and all doing separate things. We believe we should all be doing it together to be more effective. And we are going forward and achieving lots of things at the moment. I also have my own business called The Balance Approach, which is health and wellbeing support to businesses, charities and schools. And I'm presently doing a contract at Lancashire BME Network, where I'm a wellbeing manager, and we support BAME communities mainly in Blackburn, Burnley, but we're going further afield into Lancashire. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Elliot Evans. I work for the Lancashire NHS Trust, Lancashire Care, and I run the project called Connect My Community NHS, which I'll pop in the chat, which is on Facebook, which we help community groups and also co-host on this. Thank you very much. I think what we'll start with, we'll start across my list. So is it Sonny? Sonny?
Hi everyone, I'm Suhayl. I work for the Beacon Counselling Trust, and I primarily lead on gambling related harm, so a project to reduce the stigma and shame around gambling related harm in predominantly the BAME communities across the Northwest. Just recently we had our first South Asian gambling related harm conference online on the 19th of November, which was a great success because on the back of that, many organizations and individuals came forward, just trying to get some more help and support in how to kind of introduce this issue and this conversation in these particular communities. Yeah, and I've been working with Jackie quite closely, so I'm happy to be here today as well.
That's great. That's great. Emma, tell us.
Hi, so my name's Emma-Louise Fusari. Like Jackie said, I'm one of the co-founders and directors of Wellbeing Lancashire, but independently, I'm the founder of In-House Health. So we are a workplace health and wellbeing consultancy, and I've been a nurse for 18 years, predominantly in general practice. And I wanted to come along and talk today about what I see in the corporate environment from part of we do employee health checks, and from that we do the Audit C assessment within that. So I wanted to speak about that and talk about obviously health and well-being when it comes to alcohol consumption.
Wonderful. And we got the Be Sober ladies.
Hi. We're Lisa, Alex, Joe. Yeah, and we are Be Sober. Do you want to sort of introduce Be Sober, Liz?
Why do you always do that to me? So we're kind of a well-being company that helps transform like the health and mindset of individuals. We go to workplaces, and we've got such a wide rehab centres.
It's quite a big offering, isn't it? But it's all about getting people to change their mindset around alcohol. You don't have to be an alcoholic to want to be sober, and the benefits that sobriety can bring. So we have quite a lot of services, coaching services. We do a speaking service in rehab centres. We're kind of a go-between between the rehab centres and then getting back to kind of everyday life, normal life. And we encourage people to take part in our sober experiment.
And we organise events for sober people as well. So anybody that's 30 days sober or more. So
for any reason. Yeah, so
Wonderful.
whether that's cultural, religious, lifestyle choice, because they've been in recovery, we allow people to get together. So we're very inclusive.
Wonderful. Kellyanne, you want to tell us about you?
Hi, I'm Kellyanne Stewart. I'm here representing CGL Inspire for North and Central. I've been in the field for about 10 years now, and Elliot kindly got me involved.
Wonderful. And Daniel, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Daniel. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for over 15 years. I'm the Public Information Liaison Officer for Alcoholics Anonymous in East Lancashire. And basically, in a nutshell, my job is to go out and to inform the public and other organisations about who we are and what we do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so that's our speakers today. So what we're going to do is as we do with all these CAD talks, so anybody who's new, is we ask 3 particular questions, usually associated about alcohol and a little bit about COVID in there as well. And then if there's any other questions, we can put them in the chat, and then either yourself can ask them or we will ask them on your behalf. So just use the chat box if you want. So we're going to start off with the first question. So COVID has had a massive impact on a lot of people and everything, but how do we feel it is impacted on alcohol in itself, as in either consumption or referrals or anything like that? So let's see. I talked about somebody about this before. So Kellyanne, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, quite there. Yeah, we've seen an increase due to COVID with alcohol increases, alcohol referrals, and I think I think the COVID has had quite a serious impact on increasing the vulnerability of people who were absent, which has resulted in them relapsing as well due to being significantly socially isolated. I don't know if I've answered that.
No, that's fine. You say, what's the increase been in yours?
I don't have the specific figures. I tried to find out before I come on, but I was a bit late in that, so apologies. But I've seen an increase in Central and North with new and individuals relapsing as well.
That's great. Can I ask Daniel a question? Daniel,
the same question.
Certainly. So in the first quarter of in this year, I think the telephone stats indicated that our calls had increased by around about 35%, and in the second quarter of this year, it was by about 25%. So that tells us that there's a marked increase in people reaching out for help nationally, and also, you know, in the first week of the first lockdown, there was a bit of I wouldn't say an uproar, but a bit of confusion within Alcoholics Anonymous, because all meetings had to close in the UK, and everything all of a sudden went online, and meetings started to pop up in the second week on Zoom and on Skype, and you know, it was all new to people in recovery. You know, so a lot of people had to get used to technology. Certainly the older end of people had to get used to technology as well. But it's done us a big favour, to be honest, in a lot of respects as COVID, because not only can we attend meetings locally, we can attend meetings across the world. You know, I tend to attend the meeting now. It's actually a morning meeting. It's a 9 o'clock in the morning meeting in Los Angeles, but it's 5 o'clock in the evening in the UK on a Thursday. And it's actually a friend of mine that invited me to speak at the meeting, and I really enjoyed it. And I've been continuing to go to the meeting since. So it's been really good that we can go to meetings now anywhere in the world. You know, this hasn't just happened in the United Kingdom, of course. This COVID problem is across the world, but it's opened up meetings everywhere for us. So in some respects, it's done us a favour. It's catapulted Alcoholics Anonymous from just being in face-to-face meetings, but also being in online meetings as well. Now, more recently, after the first lockdown, we was initially restricted to 30 people in meetings, and then the government has decided to reduce that down to 15 people, but we are still able to manage mainly because we give priority to those people that are newcomers coming into meetings. So in East Lancashire, for example, now this week we have, just looking at the list, we've got about 9 meetings, and before we had around about 20 meetings per week. But then when you look at the online meetings as well, on top of that, we've got 11 meetings. So we've still got about the same number of meetings, but probably an equal split on online and face-to-face meetings.
That's great. That's great. What about yourself, Emma?
So I think initial reports show that alcohol and sales increased by about 1/3 during the first lockdown. So I think alcohol's never been more accessible for people to buy. You know, I think now it's like 60% cheaper than what it was in the 1960s in terms of affordability. Isolation because of COVID has shown that you know, that increases people's chances of drinking, and not everyone is luckily enough to be digitally connected like what we are doing now. So that isolation increases for people who are perhaps elderly, those with a chronic disease, a mental health condition, or, you know, social economic factors. So you know, that social isolation really goes in hand with substance abuse, such as alcohol. For me, from a kind of assessment point of view, the fact that a lot of health consultations have gone remote, it's really difficult to pick up on those subtle things that you would pick up in a face-to-face consultation, the smell of alcohol, kind of just how people are communicating in general. I think we talk about, you know, cancer being missed and other big things, but alcohol is definitely one of those things that I think that have gone off the radar in terms of picking things up in a consultation from the healthcare professionals.
Suhayl, yourself, what's your thoughts on it?
I think I work predominantly with individuals experiencing gambling-related issues, but within the community itself, just in general, across general mental health, at Beacon Counselling Trust, we have seen a surge of kind of referrals in our work. And there's been a lot of challenges with that because, generally speaking, we had low turnout from the BME community in mental health services anyway. And COVID has in some ways made that somewhat more difficult, because how do we reach them, those individuals? How can we make our services more accessible? So from the individuals which I've met who have had difficulty with alcohol, I've seen that, you know, depression and anxiety, loneliness, and these are a couple of factors which were heightened during the COVID pandemic. And what we've tried to do is through a kind of food distribution kind of service, we've tried to have well-being conversations with individuals, and those well-being conversations has then resulted in individuals then talking about isolation, talking about their struggles with different types of addiction, whether that be alcohol or anything else like that. But it's kind of just highlighted it. Like I was quite inspired by something that Daniel said, how COVID has made a difference in how people are being forced to kind of resort to technology, whereas previously we were quite averse to it, you know. However, now technology seems to be that anonymity through Zoom in speaking to somebody might be quite good for many people. So it works both ways in my kind of experience during this time.
That's great. And the Be Sober ladies?
Yeah, we've a few different, well, it's very in line with everyone else really, but we did our own survey through social media platforms during the first lockdown, and just from people's own perspective, and we're talking very much just what you would consider the normal kind of drinking community. 36% of people across our social media said that their drinking had increased during lockdown for one reason or another, whether that be because they were homeschooling or because their work patterns had changed. But there's you know, other more anecdotal things, like for us, our coaching services are in demand because the government funded services don't have enough money to sustain what's happening during lockdown perhaps, or people aren't accessing them in the same way. So we've actually had quite a lot of demand. Our numbers have grown within what we're doing. And then as another two kind of observations, you know, the Royal College of Psychiatrists reported a doubling in at-risk drinkers between February and June. So that's now at 8.5 million. That doesn't even take into consideration the kind of grey area or dependent drinkers. That's just people at risk of alcoholism. And then a charity that we volunteer for called NACOA, who are the National Association for Children of Alcoholics, reported a doubling in calls during lockdown from children who were scared at home. And you know, that was previously 1 in 5 school-aged children living with what they would consider an alcoholic parent. And they've had a doubling in calls and a doubling in what they call dropped calls. So people reaching out and then maybe being frightened to speak. So yeah, I mean, just the side effects of that is concerning. You know, the domestic violence increase, the mental health that we've already talked about, the problems with mental health, the reduction in the access to services during lockdown, people who don't have technology, like you said, the elderly, or people who can't access technology because they're afraid, they're at home and they can't maybe get to school to use the internet. So there's a lot of side effects for us. That it's not just the direct impact of the addiction, it's kind of the family impact as well.
We've set things up though, haven't we, through the lockdown? Something new that we've done, it's a little bit similar to what Daniel was saying with the online meetings. So we run something now called the Sober Lounges, and what we found is a lot more people are coming onto them and interacting with us on them.
And what we have found on them is quite a spin to everything we have just said, is the people, about 50% of our attendees to those lounges have successfully given up drinking throughout the lockdown, and they've found it a really valuable opportunity where they're on their own, they're not being asked to go to the pub, they're not being asked to dinner with friends and therefore share a bottle of wine. So in some respects, it has really, really helped them get good foundations in the sobriety before the world reopens up to, you know, the previous normal. So I suppose there are pros and cons. It's a lot more cons, but we have seen the positive impact as well on certain individuals.
I was just going to say that's something we all work on across our social media and with all our groups, is rather than the negatives that alcohol brings all the time, we massively focus on all the amazing things that actually sobriety brings. And it doesn't have to be all, oh, we can't have a drink anymore. Well, actually, you can be living your best life. You can be loving sober life. You can be meeting other sober people. You can be arranging things. So we're really, really proud of how we've kind of put a spin on it, and rather than being negative, like smashing sobriety, loving it and getting people to join these lounges.
No, that's great. It does kind of lead into second question a little bit there as well. So Jackie, you've got the second question.
Yeah, it does. You know, and absolutely inspirational what you're doing there at Be Sober. I love what you're saying. And, you know, it's educating people, isn't it? And that's the next question really I want to ask is, what do we need to do in terms of awareness and education? What is it you think we need to do more of? Suhayl, I'm going to go to you first.
Just to interject in that one just a little bit. The other part of it is as you touched on there about, you know, like going to somebody's house about drinking and things like that. You know, I always look at it as if somebody asks me to stop, if I told somebody, oh, today I've decided to stop eating Brussels sprouts, no, we got sprouts, you know, nobody cares. But if you say, right, well, I've stopped drinking, some people would think there's something wrong with you. Well, why have you stopped drinking? What's wrong with you? Are you on medication? You know, I drank in my 20s very, very heavily. Don't need to go fully into that, but let's just say it was very, very heavy. And when I stopped, I did 4 years of nothing, cold turkey, don't advise it. But they would be that I lost so many friends because it would be, well, why aren't you coming out? You know, have more than a Coke. Why don't you just have just one vodka? It's not going to kill you. You know, that type of thing. So there's that to consider. So yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. Yes, so Suhayl, what do we need to do? What do you think we need to do? Education and awareness, you know, particularly in communities where it's not spoken about so much. What do you think we need to do?
I believe obviously drinking in itself is a great taboo and subject within the community where I come from, and it's hardly ever talked about, and even if it is talked about, it is very much a faith-based narrative that it's haram, it's forbidden, there's only a little bit of benefit in it, and it's even some people refer to it as mother of all evils kind of thing. So there's an automatic sense of, okay, this, you shouldn't talk about it, or there's not much to talk about it. What is there to talk, because it's forbidden, and stay away from it. However, we know, and I think many people from my background or culture tend to not understand that drinking can be used as a coping mechanism, you know, by individuals when life gets tough or when there's stresses within one's life. And I think that's the greatest piece of education which is missing, that as individuals who come from very communities where there are many taboo subjects, what are they meant to do? And especially living in Britain, when many things are open to do. So for example, drinking, gambling, you know, so addiction doesn't take place in isolation, you know. It's how we are socialized at times, what we see young people growing up on TV, you know, they might see it as well. So it's about educating young people and having those conversations, that what impact would drinking have upon yourself, in your community, in your family? Because generally speaking, many people within who I've come across actually developed problem drinking, which was down to other issues that they weren't able to speak about to their partners, to their families. And I think we do offer safer drinking or drinking education, alcohol education, or that. However, I think it's very much, the narrative is very much geared towards a specific audience. However, within certain cultures, it's not the norm. It's actually, even if it's not a religious culture, it's still seen to be a vice. It seems to be a bad thing to actually drink. So how do we tailor and how do we frame our education? It's got to be more open. And I think not enough is being done, especially within our communities, to actually go to the madrasas, to go to the evening schools and educate young people about how drinking could affect them. What are their views on things? So having this open-hearted kind of encounter. And I think that's what I'm trying to do within the mosques where I speak at, is talk through my resilience, not through drinking, but through gambling, and just make it normal, the conversation to be normal, so that people can resonate with an individual who has been through it, and then empathize more. Because where there's judgment, there's no empathy. Well, that's what I believe. And I think it's quite important that we do speak in those forums and those places where there are taboo subjects. And the best way is to find resilience from within the community, because there are many people who you will find who are sober now, but they won't, therefore, for fear of speaking up, they won't really talk about it. So it's about empowering people.
Yeah,
you know,
and I think you were hugely successful in your conference, that the first ever conference in the UK, which you had over 80 people at, which is amazing. And there's something like that we could do, isn't it? And it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great points there, Suhayl. Emma, what do you think we can do in education?
I think for me, it has to start at the very beginning. So prevention is one of my biggest values. And when we talk about alcohol, I think society as a whole tends to think of bad alcohol habits as being about binge drinking or being paralytic, falling on the streets. And there's so many people out there that are drinking well over the recommended weekly recommended allowance or units that aren't alcohol dependent yet. That will come later on if they don't kind of curb that habit. So for me, when I speak to people during their health checks and through motivational interviewing, when you bring up the subject of alcohol, most people actually don't identify as having a problem or having bad alcohol habits. And for me, it's the education around that. It's educating people on what what constitutes a unit. Are you drinking every single day? And it's about those early conversations so that it doesn't become taboo in the first place. I also think the cage questions, I don't know if you are aware of those questions, are good just for people to think about it and being prompted. So, do you think you need to cut down on your alcohol? Are you annoyed when someone criticises you about alcohol? Do you have guilty feelings around alcohol and drinking that? And, are you drinking in the morning to kind of get through the stresses of the day? And like Suhayl said, alcohol is a bad coping strategy when it comes to stress and anxiety. So for me, it's just having those, some of you guys there will be dealing more with the dependency and the after effects. But for me, there should be a whole piece around before that and opening the conversation and the dialect about what is healthy and what's unhealthy when it comes to alcohol.
I like that, Emma. And so really it's about people understanding moderation. Moderation's okay. But what other tools can they have? I think that's quite important. Daniel, what do you think? What tools can people have? Or what would you advise that they would give with the awareness and education? What can we give them?
I mean, certainly from AA's perspective, we still need to continue to inform others about who we are and what we do. Unfortunately, even though we've been going since 1935 and 1947 in the UK, there's still an awful lot of people who don't know what Alcoholics Anonymous does and how they help people. And from my own personal perspective, surprising as this may sound, the health sector is the most difficult sector for us to get into in terms of informing staff about who we are for some strange reason. We're in Alcoholics Anonymous are actually in the NICE guidelines as one of the organisations that should be suggested for long-term recovery from alcohol addiction, and yet 9 times out of 10 I would say that we're not being suggested or recommended by doctors. We see very low referral rates coming from health services, and this is one of the areas, certainly in East Lancashire, where we've been concentrating on trying to work with health services. Recently, just before COVID, actually, we was about to set up a meeting at Royal Blackburn Hospital on the gastro ward, but unfortunately, COVID put an end to that. So that's on ice at this moment in time. We were planning on going in there every couple of weeks. We've also been working with East Lanc CCG in terms of giving meeting information, sending videos electronically to inform doctors and nurses and other clinicians about who we are. Lots of it's about using emails and social media these days to educate others. The other important thing as well from our perspective is to put on public meetings and open meetings. A lot of people don't realise as non-alcoholics you can actually attend an open meeting of AA. This has happened for many years. And on occasions we put on public meetings. I think it was last month and the month before we actually did our first meetings in Lancashire online, where we invited people from all different sectors to come along and to find out more about AA, to listen. And when you listen to a life story of somebody who's been in recovery, you get a true picture of what someone's been through, and you get a true understanding of not just how they suffered, but ultimately how they recovered and how they've maintained their sobriety. And, a lot of people don't realise that you can get sober, you can remain sober. And I was in that, I mean, me personally, I was in that much denial that I didn't go to my own granddad and to my own uncle that were in recovery. You know, my granddad he was 38 years sober at the time when I came into AA, and yet I didn't even ask him about AA. So I think if I knew more about it back then maybe I would have got into recovery sooner, you know. And just on a final point that Suhayl said about the black and ethnic minority community, you know, that's one area that again is difficult for us to get into, but we do have members of our fellowship that are Muslim, and we are aware that there is a problem in the community. And certainly if he feels that there's areas that we can work together with you, then certainly after the call I'd be willing to get together and to be able to offer our help. And that's what it is. It's all about looking for opportunities. We've got a brand new young person's video. It's just less than 2 minutes long, and we've put it out there, and we found that it's really effective. You know, I put it on my own personal Facebook account, this 2-minute video, and the morning after I put it on, a friend of mine from school in Canada actually sent me a private message saying that I've got a problem with alcohol. Can you help us out? You know, and it's just by carrying the message. That's what we do. That's part of our program of recovery, is carrying the message to other alcoholics and extending our help to each other. So I hope that's answered that question.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
It really has, Daniel. And I think the lived story is so powerful. People have actually lived the story. That's what people need to hear. And I think it's great that you're getting it out there. Well done. Kellyanne, what do you think?
I am to agree with everything that's already been said. Really strongly agree with Emma as well, that has to start right from the beginning, and that prevention. And I think we do need to go back to basics from high schools to colleges. You know, GPs, we've come a long way there. We do make a lot more progress there, but I think there's still work to be done, getting linked and back in with the house teams and hospitals and educating there. It's something that we do need to talk more about. We have to work together to be able to achieve it, rather than doing our own bits, if you know what I mean. I think if we joined up together, we would be a lot more successful. And getting that message out there, and that lived experience, and it is so powerful. It really, really is. And I think, you know, recovery is a way of life. You know, it really is, and everybody's recovery is different, and it's different for them. And what works for one doesn't always work for someone else, but you have to try it before you know.
That's great, Kellyanne. And collaboration is everything, isn't it? It's so powerful when we all come together. And why these Zooms are so great is that everyone's coming together to help everybody. And it's just so powerful. Be sober. You're already out there doing the stuff. Tell us more about what you've been up to.
You know something, I was just listening then about the healthcare providers and teachers. And I think something that I found when I stopped drinking is when I told people that I'd stopped drinking, they wanted to tell me that they didn't have a problem with drink. It was the first thing. I'm like, I don't drink anymore. And they go, oh, well, I don't drink that much anyway. And I think when we're speaking to teachers and doctors and nurses, it's very still in the mindset of them and us, the people that can moderate, the normal drinkers and those that have a problem. So something we try and do is really work with what you would say was normal drinkers and help them realize that there's not really normal drinking, and alcohol itself is addictive. And we don't kind of focus on the person, do we?
No, which I know it is slightly different to the way the AA approach is, but we do have a lot of the same kind of values. So, you know, just following on from what Lisa was saying, you know, and what Emma said, being dependent on alcohol for us, we all are sober. We don't class ourselves as being in recovery because, you know, there's still that kind of label around it of, oh, well, if you didn't drink in the morning, you didn't have a problem. Well, that's not the case, because if you're having one glass of wine after work because you want to wind down, that is a dependency in itself. It's a very, very subjective thing. You know, if you're drinking more than you want to be drinking, which could be one glass a week, then that is dependency. So we go from that point of view. So yeah, there needs to be more work done. You know, we know people who've gone to the GP and said, I'm drinking a bottle of wine a night, I want some help, and they've gone, you're not drinking enough to qualify for help. You know, that's not seen as dependency, and they're reaching out for help and then being told you don't have a problem. You know, if you go into some of the other communities, 1 glass a week would be a problem because it's forbidden, as Suhayl was correctly saying before. You know, so let's just go off the fact of what, not even cultural. Alcohol's poisonous. That is factual. People don't want to hear that, but it's factual.
I don't want to hear it.
Professor Nutt, who was the chief medical advisor, a drug and alcohol advisor for the government, was sacked for saying it was the most harmful drug in the world, which it is, because if you take into effect the physical damage, the emotional damage, the family damage, the community damage, it is the single biggest cost to our services. In any, you know, it causes so much damage and harm, family breakdown, leads to other addictions, addiction transfer, leads to people gambling, all of those other things come as kind of a secondary to it, perhaps. So we do need more education around with healthcare workers, but I actually think, and we think, it starts much sooner than going to teenagers who are already dabbling in alcohol because it's cool and it's fun. It needs to go right back to primary school and younger, of like, you know, what is it that we are looking for by trying to change our mental and emotional and physical state? Let's look at the problem. Let's look at the real problem, not the symptom. The drinking is a symptom of something much deeper in many cases. Most people are self-medicating something or blacking something out, blotting something out, trying to cope. So let's get beyond before that. And the other thing is, I'm actually a teacher by profession. It's taught very much in schools as okay, don't have over 14 units a week and then you'll be safe. The end, that's it. You know, we need to be looking here at the whole issue. There's children sat in classrooms going, oh, that's my mummy and daddy you're saying about. That's my mummy and daddy that drink too much. We shouldn't be doing that with our children. It should be very much a case of, this is alcohol, this is what it does to you, this is why you shouldn't drink it, and let's start much earlier. You know, nothing's healthy. Half a glass a year is considered safe. If it was to run through FDA approval like every other additive and drug nowadays, half a glass a year would be classed as safe. And that's not us making things up. That they are the facts. People don't want to hear it, and until, you know, employers, healthcare workers, scientists are ready to sit back and go, okay, this is true, this will not stop. You know, we're not going to help people. It's too late once we've got people in recovery. Yes, we can recover, and I'm not saying it's too late in that respect, but the money's being spent in recovery when, as Emma correctly said, it needs to go into prevention at every step of the way.
Yeah, and I also feel society really should take a bit of responsibility. The broadcasters, the retailers, if you try and find a birthday card, you will struggle if it doesn't have a nod to alcohol on it. Our local radio station did a morning breakfast show. How are you going to get through lockdown this time? The presenter said, work, walking and wine. That's how she was going to do it. And she repeated that phrase 50 times during that morning breakfast show. I was absolutely disgusted with it. And I'm sorry, I do like to have a little rant when things get on me. But I think as a society as a whole, we need to take a bit of responsibility. All of our soap operas are surrounded by alcohol. They're all based in a pub. I know it's sort of from the olden days. We need to really look at changing that. You know, it's like, oh, poor Phil Mitchell, he's an alcoholic, but we can all go and get drunk in the pub because we're normal drinkers. We just need to have a different approach. We really do, because it's very subtly drip fed into everything. It's so ingrained in our society, and that's where the problem starts.
That's fantastic. It's very, very passionate. I do agree with a lot of that, clearly, so yeah, don't worry about that. So our last question, if anybody else has any questions they want to pop in the chat, I will ask these afterwards, and even if you have them for each other, we can do that afterwards. So the last question is kind of like a two-pronged one, really, because when we obviously do these CAD talks, we do plan them in advance, and we do talk about what groups we're looking at setting up next year. And one subject that was brought up is regarding the alcohol. And what we talked about support for the families of people who are suffer, who have either died, bereavement from alcohol, or are going through end of life care. So in relation to a lot of the support, and a lot of the support in this chat will be for the actual alcoholic or the person suffering from alcohol. But when we talk about the families and the external impact, there needs to be support for them. You know, how do you go, because the stigma for it, you know, if somebody has died due to alcohol, it's similar with suicide. Well, didn't you spot the signs? Couldn't you have taken the drink off them? Couldn't you have done this? It's always blame culture in there. It's not everybody, but it does happen. And it needs to be more that support, because it doesn't matter who you are in your family. If your partner is drinking, it doesn't matter what you do or say. Even if you took it off them, they will find a way to carry on drinking, because it's not you, and it's not the child, it's not the partner or anything along those lines, or your family members. It's that person. So there needs to be support for them. So if you do know any support groups for the families, do let us know. And if not, we will be looking at creating one, starting in central Lancashire, because that's where we're based for it. But then hopefully we can start expanding them out, because I think they're the groups that are kind of left behind in relation to support. So that's something we're going to do. So the question really is what support is out there for both the alcoholic and for the family members? So let's see, who should we start with? Suhayl. Oh.
Yeah, a very good question. I'm glad you brought family and friends up, because a lot of times they're the hidden harm, aren't they? Or people don't notice that. I don't have a experience in a professional capacity. I know the devastating impact it has on family members trying to support a gambler or an alcoholic, a person who's struggling with this. Just in a non-professional capacity, I supported an individual within the community who was alcohol addiction.
I'm losing you a bit there.
And can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I managed to get. It says my connection is unstable for some reason, but I managed to get his wife into support. So a group called Emerging Futures, and in Preston, and they were very good, where they managed to meet myself and a couple of individuals from the community and the family of the individual who was suffering, and we had a private kind of a meeting. And since that meeting, his wife then sought counselling. She also managed to get a house, you know. So I feel that support, which I signposted her to Emerging Futures, made a world of difference for her. And many times what I see is then depression, anxiety, then those mental stresses and strain then manifest into physiological issues for family members. So within our culture, family members constantly try to just brush it under the carpet, you know, and some are so ashamed that they stop interacting with family members, or other family members stop interacting with that family because they are known, or the husband or the wife is known to be drinking, etc. So I think a lot more needs to be done, but I think I do see some positive steps where Beacon Counselling itself gives couples therapy as well. And also separate therapy just for affected others, as they are called. So I think I think what needs to be done as well within community groups, a lot of organizations where vulnerable people access those services. I think the screening, which I think somebody mentioned previously about the questions, I think it's quite important that those questions are asked quite regularly.
Yeah, that's great. Daniel, you put a post in regarding some information regarding support groups. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, and obviously what other support AA can do?
Yeah, certainly. So our sister fellowship, Al-Anon, which isn't directly linked to Alcoholics Anonymous, it is a separate organisation, but this was actually started by our co-founder's wife, Lois Wilson, who recognised that family and friends of alcoholics needed help. And she started this organisation, you know, obviously years ago. And again, this organisation's grown across the world, and we have local meetings in Lancashire as well. So, you know, there is places that family and friends can go in terms of support, even using the 12-step recovery program. You know, the 12-step recovery program isn't just for alcoholics, it's for anyone that's suffering from not just the addiction issues, but also from issues relating around alcohol. So yeah, that's in terms of that, there is support available. And I know that there's other organisations that like NACOA that's been mentioned as well, that supports families as well. In terms of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, initially the support that we have is we have a telephone service that operates 365 days a year, where people can phone up and inquire about help from AA. They also take calls from professionals and volunteers wanting to find out more about AA as well. From our main website, we also have a chat now facility. So if you go on our national website, in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little yellow bit that comes up in the corner that's open. I think it's open from 7 a.m. until midnight every day, again, you know, 365 days a year, where people can ask questions about you know, where to get help, etc. And then we also take emails as well, and the email address is on our national website. So there's 3 different ways that people can get access in that respect. Also, people can just turn up at meetings. You know, there's no formal referral process for Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't need to fill any forms in. You don't need to register in that respect. The services that we provide are for free. You know, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. So we do send a pot around after the meeting to support ourselves financially, but it's not obligatory to support us in this way. So if you are skint and you're wanting help, you know that it's free in terms of AA. I think it's very important to note that, you know, the number of meetings that we have, you know, we have around about 4,000 meetings a week that take place in the UK and over 100,000 across the world. You know, it's been very beneficial for me to go, you know, to have my recovery. When I go away on holiday, you know, I've been to meetings from Latvia to Dubai and all other sorts of places. And, you know, it's just really important that there's that support network that's available it's in over 190 countries of the world. So you can imagine, you know, the different places that you can go to and you can tap into AA whilst you're on holiday. You know, a lot of people are fearful about going away because they're surrounded by alcohol around the pool and stuff like that, and especially if you're young in recovery, and it's important that you've got help wherever you go, you know. So, and the other thing I think in terms of support, in terms of Alcoholics Anonymous itself, is the fact that we've got sponsors within AA that guide people through the 12-step recovery program, people that you can talk to on a private basis. Let's say, for example, if you didn't feel that you was confident in terms of talking about an issue in a meeting, you can always turn to your sponsor and talk to them on a one-to-one basis. And again, a sponsor helps you free of charge. You don't need to pay for that service. And you know, I think it's really important that
it's fantastic.
Just briefly about the 12-step recovery program, because we have I mean, everything in AA is not obligatory. You know, you can't tell an alcoholic what to do at the end of the day. So everything in AA is suggested. But if people choose to do the 12-step recovery program, then you can rid yourself of the obsession to drink. You know, a lot of alcoholics don't believe that you can get rid of that obsession, and you can get rid of resentment, you can get rid of fear, you can get rid of guilt, you can get rid of all sorts of stuff. So I think it's important to mention that as well. So
appreciate that. Yeah, we've just got to go on a little bit because we're running out of time here. So be sober. I know you put a couple of bits in the chat, but do you want to put any ads in there?
Well, we've mentioned NACOA already several times, but just to clarify exactly what people can get from there. So we've got the message board, which is brand new. They've got a brand new website. It was only launched last week. It's run by volunteers, but all the volunteers are trained. Anyone, adult or child, if they are living or have lived with a parent that they say has drank too much, can go on there. There's all sorts of topics. You can ask for advice. There's the helpline, completely anonymous, as in it will not even show up on the phone bill. NACOA has battled very hard in Parliament to make sure they remain anonymous, right down to the fact that we do not even have any figures to give you on demographics or anything else. It's that protected. So yeah, there's NACOA. We obviously have our own support as well. Anyone who feels that they are drinking too much out of their own subjective opinion can join us. We have membership options on our website. We do also run the weekly lounges, which are very, very affordable. They're as cheap as we can get them, and hopefully we'll run for free when we can get the right level of funding. And they are a weekly lounge and a weekly drop-in. That's not just for people who drink. We will support family members as well in there, and anyone can join that. And then obviously, you know, the saying that we hear a lot of is that the opposite of addiction is connection. So we believe that, you know, getting communities together, whatever your reason not to drink, and actually having other people who are like-minded and who can support you is very, very important. So when we're not in COVID, we have our face-to-face meetups, but also as many online as we can, and all that again can be found on our website. Do you want to add anything?
You've done it all.
No, that's brilliant. And Kellyanne, I know you've just put in the message chat that you've sent me over a timetable. So you have sent me over a timetable. That'll be on our Connect My Community NHS page this afternoon. But is there anything you wanted to quickly add?
No, I totally agree. I think we do focus quite a lot on the person in recovery, and we do forget the damage that causes to families and young children. You know, Emerging Futures, Red Rose Recovery, there's some fantastic people out there who offer lots of support to families. I think there needs to be a bit more for younger children, because I think the experience because they're so young and vulnerable. I do think there needs to be more put into that area. But I do see a lot of positive steps moving forward. I know Pause Recovery also help support families, but it's all in the timetable that I have sent over.
That's wonderful. Emma, do you want to close us off on this question then, please?
Yeah, so I think everyone's given really great support resources for families that need to do. You know, the long-term impact of alcoholism can lead to things for the person, such as stroke, heart attack, liver disease, cancer, increased mental health and anxiety. So that often leaves the families being full-time carers for that person when that impacts them in terms of long-term health conditions. So I just think it's really important that if someone has become a carer of an alcoholic, then they need to be accessing their own health support. So whether that's support from the GP, from the services suggested, I just think it's really important that, you know, as caregivers, we tend to put ourselves last, but to be able to look after someone, we need to practice our own self-care. So that's just another dimension for people to think about, really, rather than, you know, phoning helplines and things like that.
I really appreciate that. Today's chat has been fantastic. Not as many numbers as we usually get, but as we said before, it is December, so we do expect that. This chat will actually be sent over by Jackie to our team. We'll get it edited. We'll get it onto YouTube, which will be the Lancashire and South Cumbria NHS Trust on YouTube channel, in which we will send everybody the links. What we'll also do for our speakers is we will send you over the hard copy if you wanted it. So you can plug that into wherever you need to. Just let us know if you want a hard copy and we can get that sorted. So our next, this is our last CAD Talk of the year. It has been fantastic. And our next one is in January. It'll be January the 26th, which we are doing so it's digital inclusion in Lancashire. So we'll be talking, as we've mentioned in before, that everybody can actually access the internet. So we need to look at why people can't access the internet and how we can help more people access online and be able to do more things. And should we all be inclusive? Should we be doing both? You know, this thing might be carrying on for quite a period of time. Has it been helpful? That type of thing. So we will be discussing that. So anybody who wants to jump in there, please do. We'll be doing it alongside Wellbeing Lancashire as per normal, but we will also be in partnership with Healthier Lancashire, which covers the whole of Lancashire. So it will be a full Lancashire-wide conversation, and Cumbria, because they cover Cumbria as well. So we will be covering across the board for that. So I really appreciate that, everybody, for coming. If you have any questions, quite happily to stay on. We're going to knock off the recording now. Please, Jackie.
Yeah.
But we'll say goodbye. We'll say goodbye. So if you want to stay on and just have a quick chat with anybody who's still here and everything for a few minutes before we shoot off, please do. But other than that, we really appreciate it. Have a good Christmas and a fantastic New Year, and we'll hope to see you again next year.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Our next CAD Talk is digital inclusion in Lancashire. Until then, from all of us at the CAD team, we'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.